Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Denise Amber Lee. Nathan and Denise's family lives in the SRO Soda District, located near the west coast of Florida. They started dating in their senior year of high school. Nathan is a talented athlete. He is very funny and often makes people laugh. Denise, on the other hand, is very calm. She is known for being smart and kind. On their first Valentine's Day together, Nathan gave Denise a heart-shaped ring. Soon after, the couple got married and settled in a quiet area in Latura Venue, where they rented a house. By 2008, the couple had 2 children, Noah, 2 years old, and Adam, 6 months old. Nathan worked 3 jobs to provide for the family, while Denise focused on running the household. She loved her children and her husband very much. Although the economy was difficult at times, the couple was still happy together. Thursday, January 17, 2008, Nathan left for work early that morning. Around 11:00 a.m., during his break, he called his wife and they talked for about 5 minutes while Noah was cutting his hair on the back porch. They talked about the nice weather, and Nathan asked Denise to open the windows to let in some fresh air. She told him that she had already done so. Everything was normal, and there were no problems. After hanging up, Nathan went back to work and finished his shift at 3:00 p.m. He then called Denise back to let her know that he was on his way home, but there was no answer. During the drive home, he tried to call her 8 more times. When Nathan got home, he found all the windows closed. Denise was not home. He found her keys and phone on the living room sofa. Like most people, Denise would never leave the house without those items, especially when there were small children home alone. Nathan found the 2 boys lying side by side in their upstairs crib. There was no sign of forced entry or struggle, and since the children were too young to understand what had happened, he sensed something was wrong. At 3:29 p.m., Nathan called the police and reported the situation. He told them he was in Northport at the Latura Venue and had just returned from work. He realized his wife was missing and he couldn't find her. The children were with him, but he had no information on where she might be, despite a thorough search of the house. Soon after, the police arrived at Nathan's house. The officers began knocking on neighbors' doors to see if anyone had noticed anything unusual. To everyone's surprise, a valuable lead emerged. Around 2:00 p.m., Jennifer Eckhart, a neighbor, was watching television when she saw a dark green Chevrolet slowly driving down the street. The car drove around the front of her house about 5 times. The car stood out because of its distinctive black front liner, which was added to protect it from minor damage. The neighbor sensed something was wrong and stepped into the front yard just as the car pulled into Nathan and Denise's driveway. Jennifer stared at the driver, thinking he was just looking for a house and had finally found it. Feeling reassured, she went back inside to watch TV. However, after about 10 minutes, she stepped outside again just as the car drove away. Although she did not catch a glimpse of the passenger, she carefully observed the driver's face and later gave the police a brief description of him. After calling 911, Nathan reached out to Rick Goform, a police officer in nearby Charlotte County. Within 30 minutes, Rick organized a large search for Denise, involving officers, search dogs, patrol units, and even a helicopter. The Northport area was put on alert. Denise was declared missing, and posters were distributed to raise awareness of her disappearance. Local police were instructed to closely monitor a dark green Chevrolet and its driver, described as a chubby white man in his 30s. More than 2 hours passed without any sign of Denise or any other clues to aid the search. At 6:14 p.m., police received a call from Denise. She said she was in a car that was being taken somewhere. She informed police that she did not know the kidnapper, gave her full name, and mentioned the street where she lived. The police attempted to trace the call. Unfortunately, Since the call was made from an old phone without GPS, they were unable to pinpoint the exact location. However, they were able to identify the registrant of the number as Michael Lee King, a 36-year-old man. Michael was recently divorced and was raising his 12-year-old son on his own. It is important to note that he has a low IQ of around 76, which makes him mentally retarded. He was in a childhood accident when he was 6 years old. He suffered a serious brain injury while skiing. Despite these challenges, Michael has lived a normal life and has never had any legal problems. Denise gave her name and home address in the call to the police, and the police immediately forwarded this information. The recording of the call was passed on to Denise's father, who recognized his daughter's voice, confirming that she was in danger. It was clearly Michael who had kidnapped Denise. During the call, Michael mentioned his cousin, Harold. Suddenly, after Denise's call ended at 18:23, the police received another call from Harold's 17-year-old daughter, Sabrina. Sabrina said that her uncle Michael stopped by to visit her father, and a woman jumped out of his car. Michael pushed her in. Then he borrowed a shovel and a can of gasoline from Harold. At around 6:00 p.m., Michael did indeed show up at his cousin Harold's house. He parked his car on the side of the road. He asked for gas, a flashlight, and a shovel. He explained that the lawnmower had gotten stuck in the mud in front of his house. As Harold was handing him some things, they heard a woman screaming in distress from the car. Harold asked Michael what was going on, but Michael dismissed it, saying that Harold didn't need to worry. Michael then got into the driver's seat and drove away quickly. Initially, Harold thought that he might have just witnessed a family argument between Michael and his new girlfriend. However, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling about the situation. To avoid making a mistake, Harold decided to go home first to see if Michael was okay. When he arrived, Michael wasn't there, and he wasn't in the front yard either. Meanwhile, their daughter, Sabrina, was worried about the uncut lawn, which prompted her to call the police. Police became concerned when they learned about the items Michael had taken from Harold, prompting them to intensify their search. At 6:30 p.m., just 7 minutes after Sabrina's call, 911 operator received another call from Jane Kowalski, who was driving south on the freeway. She noticed something disturbing. She reported that while stopped at a red light on Chamberlain Street, another driver pulled up next to her, and she heard a woman screaming loudly from inside the car. Jane described the car as blue, like a Chevrolet from the early 2000s. The driver was a light-skinned man, and there was a woman in the back seat who was screaming and banging on the windows. Jane then reported that the driver was about to turn left, and the dispatcher advised Jane to follow him closely and keep an eye on him. Moments later, Jane reported that the man accelerated away, making a sharp left turn onto Taldeblay, leaving her no time to react. Now, she was unsure if she could catch up with him because of the heavy traffic on the highway, which made driving very difficult. Jane believes she witnessed a kidnapping. She accurately described the driver and the make of the car. However, she got the color of the car wrong. She mistook green for blue. She observed a man turning the steering wheel with one hand while pressing the head of someone in the back seat with the other. She heard someone screaming and banging on the window. Jane then caught up with Michael's Chevrolet, and both cars remained stationary for a while, waiting for the red light. Eventually, Jane began to move, and Michael changed lanes to follow her. Jane deliberately drove slowly, thinking that the Chevrolet driver would pass her, allowing her to follow. But at that moment, Michael also slowed down and turned towards Mishtar 75. Jane then called the 911 operator and provided the location of Michael's car. But the situation then took a tragic and unexpected turn. Jane provided information to the 911 operator about the location of the kidnapper's car. However, officers were never dispatched to the location she provided. A recording of Jane's conversation with the operator shows the office was very noisy. The operator relayed the information to 2 dispatchers, while loudly expressing frustration with them. Both dispatchers admitted to receiving the information, but did not send patrol units to the designated area. The dispatchers later explained that Jane's call came during a shift change and that they were understaffed at the time. The dispatchers were eventually suspended without pay. A search helicopter and several patrol units were on standby, but no one informed them of the exact location of Michael's car. The next day, Jane saw a photo of Michael on the news and immediately recognized him as the driver she had seen the day before. She reached out to the police, introducing herself as the woman who had called 911 the previous day, and asked if they needed any more information. To her surprise, the officers were unaware of her call and did not know who she was. Now, let's go back to the day before when Denise was still in the car. At 5:50 p.m., 20 minutes after Jane's call, 911 received a 5th call. Michael's cousin, Harold, reported that he wasn't sure what the problem was, but it sounded like someone needed medical assistance. He mentioned a green 1995 Chevrolet and indicated that a woman inside the car appeared to need help. Chevrolet called from a payphone and shared all the details, but he didn't want to reveal his identity. His information largely matched what his daughter Sabrina had provided. Over the next 2 hours, the officers found no leads. At 21:16, Officer Edward Pope was on Tala de Blaze Street when he saw a green Chevrolet speeding and making a sharp turn to the south. The officer pursued the car and managed to block it with his own vehicle, causing Michael to crash. After the accident, Officer Edward ordered Michael out of the car. After Michael got out of the car, he was soaked to the waist, and his boots were covered in mud. In his pocket, the police found the phone that Denise had used to call 911, but it had lost its battery. The police checked the back seat of the car, but found no sign of Denise. The Chevrolet Camaro was towed by the Nord Port Authority for a detailed inspection. Inside the vehicle, officers discovered a SIM card and a gasoline canister. The back seat and a blanket showed signs of staining. Denise's fingerprints were found on the exterior of the driver's window. On the front of the car, there were blood spatters, hair strands, and a strange, thick substance. Additionally, hair that had been pulled out was found stuffed in a pocket behind the driver's seat, along with Denise's heart-shaped ring, which she had always worn and never removed. Police believe Denise intentionally left this evidence to help ensure her kidnapper was caught. Michael was identified as the primary and sole suspect in the kidnapping. He refused to confess, would not reveal any information about Denise's whereabouts, and maintained his innocence. During interrogation, he remained silent. Michael's cousin Harold went to the police station to convince Michael to reveal to Denise's family where he had hidden her. Michael eventually spoke up and claimed that he and Denise had been intimate. He said that they had been held hostage by a group of masked criminals who eventually killed Denise. With a search warrant for Michael's home, the police thoroughly examined it and discovered a blanket with white spots and some blood on it. DNA testing confirmed that the blood was Michael's. In the bedroom and kitchen, pieces of adhesive tape with hair attached were discovered. The DNA from the hair roots matched that of Denise. On January 18, the day after Denise went missing, a canine unit searched the area near Blaze Street. Searchers found 2 piles of sand with visible blood. They then excavated and discovered Denise's body buried 3 feet deep in a swampy grave. She suffered a gunshot wound to the head. A cartridge case was found nearby in the grass. Denise's stained underwear and shirt were also found. DNA analysis confirmed that the biological material matched Michael's DNA. Denise's autopsy results showed that she died from head injuries. Blood and hair found outside Michael's car indicated that the car was close by when Denise was shot. Additionally, aspirin was found in Denise's lungs, indicating that she was alive and breathing for some time after the injury. She fought valiantly for her life, suffering numerous wounds and bruises while defending herself against Michael. Marks on her wrists indicated that she had been bound by Michael. Her hair and 2 pieces of duct tape were recovered, along with biological material from Michael found at the scene. Michael was on trial for first-degree murder, rape, and kidnapping, but he pleaded not guilty to all charges. His lawyers attempted to paint him as a hard-working single father with no prior legal issues. The defense said a childhood accident in which he injured his frontal lobe while skiing is believed to have affected his behavior. His family noted that Michael's attitude changed dramatically after this incident. When he was 13, he nearly killed his brother with a bow and arrow while imitating a cartoon character. After his childhood accident, he needed special education services for children with low IQs. Michael experienced severe headaches and constant ringing in his ears. A friend testified in court that in the days leading up to the abduction, Michael showed signs of paranoia, claiming that neighbors were spying on him through his windows. The defense attorneys pointed out that individuals who have suffered frontal lobe injuries are more prone to making mistakes, taking unnecessary risks, struggling with aggression control, and having trouble distinguishing between reality and fantasy. Comprehensive cognitive tests confirmed that Michael had a very low IQ. However, he still understood the concepts of actions and their consequences. Michael's defense arguments quickly weakened, especially with the shocking blood and DNA evidence presented against him in court. Additional evidence, including hair strands and Denise's heart-shaped ring hidden in a seat pocket. Family Michael's younger brother Jim took on the responsibility of raising Michael's son, who was 13 at the time. The boy needed psychological support to cope with his mother's abandonment and the impact of his father's actions. Denise's family sued Charlotte County police dispatchers for serious misconduct in the case. The case was settled out of court for $1 million. A few months after Denise's death, her husband, Nathan, established the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. He spent the next several years traveling the country, advocating for standardized training for emergency dispatchers. His dedication to this cause is truly admirable. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Jessica Camilleri. Jessica Camilleri was the younger daughter of Rita and Vince, an Australian couple of Maltese descent. Unlike her older sister Christy, Jessica was born with an intellectual disability. Jessica had an IQ of approximately 55 to 60, significantly lower than the average range of 90 to 110, which placed her in the lowest 1% and classified her as having a mild intellectual delay. Individuals with mild intellectual disabilities typically follow a different pace of development. They may start speaking, reading, writing, and doing math later than others, but can learn to communicate and express themselves in everyday situations. This delay caused her to start school later than her peers. As a result, she was vulnerable to teasing and bullying by classmates who did not understand her condition. Jessica coped with stress and anxiety by lashing out in intense anger, often targeting women. As a result, she developed intermittent explosive disorder. This mental health condition is characterized by sudden, recurring episodes of aggressive and violent behavior. Typically, intermittent explosive disorder starts in children around the age of 6 and worsens during the teenage years and early 20s. It is a mental health issue, not just a normal temper tantrum, and is linked to low levels of serotonin, a hormone in the brain that regulates emotions and mood. Jessica's behavior at school was causing problems, and she often lashed out at both students and teachers. In one incident, she physically hit a male student and refused to stop. As a result, she was suspended from school indefinitely and was forced to stay home under the care of her mother, Rita, who received a disability pension to support her. Jessica struggled with three main conditions: intellectual disability, which affected her cognitive abilities, irrational anger outbursts, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. ADHD is a chronic condition that affects the brain, making it difficult for people, especially children, to control their behavior. Jessica was diagnosed with several mental health conditions, including severe bipolar disorder, depression, and anxiety. Additionally, she had autism spectrum disorders, which impacted her ability to understand her own thoughts and feelings, as well as empathize with others. The effects of autism also made everyday tasks, such as shopping, using public transportation, banking, and working, particularly challenging for her. Jessica had fixations on certain things, including three specific numbers: 2, 3, and 5. These numbers were linked in her mind to her favorite colors: yellow for 2, green for 3, and purple for 5. As a result of her fascination with these numbers, she would often create random phone numbers to dial, attempting to speak with men. In one instance, she repeatedly called a family's home in Bangladesh over 100 times a day solely because she liked their phone number. In 2018, her fixation turned to harassment when she began targeting a meat company in Daylesford, England. Her behavior became more uncontrollable, to the point of threatening company employees, including the owner Matthew Leafield, and his family, going so far as to claim she would harm them with a chainsaw. Jessica had an unrelenting fascination with horror movies, and she couldn't shake off. She would spend an enormous amount of time rewatching violent videos, especially certain films that captured her attention. Her favorites included Saw, Jeepers Creepers, and, above all, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Released in 1974, the latter film was about young people in Texas being pursued by cannibals wielding chainsaws. The graphic violence in the movie led to it being banned in multiple countries, including Australia and the UK. When Jessica's mother, Rita, tried to stop her from watching these films, Jessica would become extremely angry. Jessica and her mother, Rita, resided in a St. Clair suburb of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Vince, Jessica's father, divorced Rita when Jessica was a teenager due to her behavioral problems. Her frequent tantrums put a strain on her parents' marriage, eventually leading to their breakup. Jessica appears to have conflicting personality traits. She has low self-esteem and is childish and naive. However, she often feels narcissistic, believing that she deserves special treatment due to her mental health needs. This thing sometimes made her take advantage of others and prioritize her own needs above theirs. However, Rita still always takes good care of her daughter. She knew her daughter had problems, but felt it was her responsibility to take care of and protect her. After discovering her daughter's harassing phone calls, Rita took the initiative to apologize. Although Jessica loved her family dearly, she was especially close to her mother, who made every effort to meet her needs and chose to care for her at home rather than seek full-time care at a psychiatric facility. In Australia, about 1 in 5 people, or 20% of the population, experienced a mental condition between 2017 and 2018. This equates to around 4.8 million people. Women are more prone to these problems than men. Young people aged 15 to 24 years were the most affected. A mental illness is a serious, diagnosable mental health condition. It affects a person's thoughts, feelings, and behavior and can impact their relationships with others. Examples of mental illnesses include depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and psychotic disorders. These conditions significantly affect individuals' emotions and relationships, not just them but also their families and caregivers. The tragic incident on July 20, 2019 was the culmination of a series of violent acts by Jessica. Her history of assaulting and violence others has been around for many years, with incidents including attacking the mother-in-law of her sister and aunt by pulling their hair. Despite her convictions, Jessica was never imprisoned and was always allowed to remain under the care of her mother, Rita, who seemed to be the only person who could accept her actions. Jessica exhibited aggressive behavior towards women in public places, such as streets and shopping centers, often because she perceived that they were staring at her in a way that made her feel uncomfortable or ashamed. This behavior reached a boiling point when she got into a physical altercation with another patient in a doctor's office waiting room, resulting in her being banned from the office. Jessica's aggressive behavior continued in 2018 when she physically attacked a nurse during a hospital visit. As a result, she was admitted to a mental health unit for 9 days to address a severe episode of her mood disorder. During her stay, she was treated with lithium, a medication commonly used to manage bipolar disorder, in addition to antipsychotic medications. In the months leading up to the crime, Jessica stopped taking her prescribed medication and instead turned to natural to manage her health conditions. At the same time, her mother, Rita, was looking for alternative ways to help Jessica. Rita even paid $2,500 to see a psychic in Sydney's suburb who claims to be able to exorcise demons, an evil force that she believes is influencing Jessica. However, many relatives and friends were concerned that Jessica might pose a danger to those around her, but Rita remained convinced that her daughter was harmless. Jessica's older sister, Christy, described their mother, Rita, as a selfless person who always put benefit others first. This thing was especially evident in the way Rita cared for Jessica, who often rejected professional help. Rita's older sister also realized her unconditional love for Jessica and frequently expressed concerns that Jessica might harm her. However, Rita's motherly love clouded her judgment, causing her to overlook her older sister's concerns. In fact, the day before the fatal attack, Rita had to take Jessica to the police station because she had been making threatening phone calls to strangers. Yet she still chose to ignore the warning signs. On July 20, 2019, Jessica felt embarrassed when her mother scolded her in front of a stranger in a parking lot. The stranger simply walked by, unaware of the tension between them. After visiting her sister, Jessica and her mother returned home. Jessica then asked her mother to order additional food from Red Rooster, but her mother, Rita, declined. Jessica became upset and placed 3 separate calls to the restaurant at 9:18, 9:20, and 9:21 p.m. Additionally, Jessica asked her mother to call a doctor to come to their house. When the doctor arrived, he was frightened by Jessica's behavior and quickly left. He was pursued by Jessica until he managed to safely escape in his vehicle. Rita could no longer wait patiently, so she told Jessica that she had decided to call an ambulance and was to take Jessica to a mental health facility. Unfortunately, this led to Jessica's most severe episode of rage. That night, 57-year-old Rita was violently attacked by her daughter in her own kitchen. The assault began when Jessica dragged her mother by the hair into the kitchen, where had a collection of 7 meat cleavers. 4 of the 7 cleavers were broken during the attack, but Jessica continued to use the remaining ones to inflict harm. She stabbed her mother's head and neck more than 100 times, causing her mother severe mutilation. This brutal act was not solely a result of Jessica's anger, revealing a disturbing level of fascination with violence, likely fueled by her excessive daily consumption of horror movies. The forensic pathologist's autopsy revealed that Rita suffered severe injuries to her head and neck, resulting in her death from multiple stab wounds. The fatal blow was a severed spine at the 2nd vertebra in her upper neck, essentially leaving her head partially detached. Notably, Rita had sustained over 90 defensive wounds, suggesting she was conscious and endured extreme pain and terror for a substantial portion of the attack. This horrific discovery is especially chilling since her own daughter, whom Rita had cared for and loved, was the one who inflicted the brutal violence. During the brutal attack, Jessica's 4-year-old nephew was present at the scene. He was the son of Jessica's older sister, Christy, and had been in Rita's care for a few days. The young boy witnessed Jessica attacking and beheading his grandmother. When he attempted to intervene, Jessica accidentally inflicted a minor head injury on him. The traumatic incident caused the boy to vomit, further adding to the horror of the scene. Jessica called the emergency number from her mother's cell phone after fatally her. During the call, Jessica claimed she acted in self-defense, stating that her mother, Rita, had attacked her first. This led to Jessica defending herself by stabbing Rita multiple times, eventually more than 100 times, and then beheading her. Following the incident, Jessica disposed of Rita's head in a nearby neighbor's yard. Upon arriving at the house in St. Clair, Sydney, New South Wales, police found Jessica outside. Her clothes stained with blood, holding a water bottle. What's striking, however, was Jessica's reaction to the situation. Rather than displaying remorse for her actions, Jessica expressed concern about her own future. She asked police officers and later detectives if it was possible to reattach her mother's head, seemingly holding onto the hope of a miraculous medical help that could bring Rita back to life. A police officer questioned the practicality of Jessica's plan, but she remained optimistic, believing that medical professionals could work miracles through surgery. Jessica also asked if she would face severe punishment, including the death penalty, for taking her mother's life. The officer informed her that Australia does not impose capital punishment, which brought her a sense of relief. Jessica then confessed to the police that her idea to decapitate her mother had originated from the horror movies she frequently watched. A disturbing conversation was captured on a police officer's body camera when they arrived at the scene at 11:43 p.m. on July 20, 2019. Upon arrival, first responders were met with a scene they described as one of the most horrific they had ever seen. The following day, July 21, 2019, Jessica appeared in court and chose not to request bail. According to a friend, this decision was not unexpected, as Jessica likely lacked understanding of the bail process. Jessica Camilleri was found guilty of manslaughter in December 2020 after a trial that focused on her long-standing mental health issues. Initially, she had pleaded not guilty to murder, citing her mental health reasons as a reason. In early 2021, she received a prison sentence of up to 21 years and 7 months, with a non-parole period of 16 years and 2 months. This means she will be eligible for parole on September 19, 2035. Christy expresses her grief and shock, revealing that her younger sister Jessica was responsible for their mother's tragic death. While hesitant to forgive Jessica, but Christy expressed hope that Jessica would receive the necessary support and care in prison. This thing helped Rita could finally rest in peace knowing that her daughter's needs were being met, something that had failed to happen during her lifetime. The judge in the case offered counseling to the jurors, acknowledging that the harrowing evidence they had heard would likely haunt them. The judge said that during jury selection, several individuals had refused to participate in the trial. She also stated that Rita's murder was one of the most serious murders the court had ever seen. She described it as a particularly heinous crime and horrifying because it occurred in the victim's own home. During the trial, Jessica's lawyer revealed that she had expressed remorse for her actions in a letter to her family. In the letter, Jessica acknowledged that Rita had not provoked her and took responsibility for her mother's death. Jessica was evaluated by a psychiatrist who noted that she often lacked facial expressions when communicating with others. Although Jessica showed limited emotions, she did not exhibit signs of schizophrenia or hallucinations. The psychiatrist's conclusion was that Jessica required long-term, comprehensive mental health support to manage her risk factors and address her underlying issues. Jessica was incarcerated in the strictest unit of the women's section at the correctional complex. Throughout her time in prison, she continued to engage in problematic behavior. An incident standout involved a dispute over food exchange on September 9, 2019, and she responded by throwing a teacup at another inmate. Although she was charged with assault in court the following day, she did not receive any additional punishment. There were several other notable incidents involving her during her imprisonment. She got into a fight with another inmate on October 14, 2019, and was punished with 5 days in solitary confinement. Additionally, she disobeyed an order on November 3, 2019, and damaged property on July 31, 2020, resulting in a fine of $200. Another assault incident occurred on November 21, 2020, for which she received 7 days in solitary confinement. In January 2021, she was convicted of common assault once more, but did not face any additional consequences. Jessica has defended her actions, explaining that no matter what she does or where she goes, other inmates will continue to cause her misery. She also pointed out that life behind bars is challenging and vastly different from life on the outside. One major issue in prisons is the high prevalence of mental health issues. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, in 2018, nearly half of Australian prisoners had been diagnosed with a mental health condition. Although there is no direct correlation between having a mental health condition and committing a crime, these statistics suggest that many prisoners in Australia struggled with mental health issues before their incarceration. Research has found a link between mental illnesses and in likelihood of committing crimes, especially among individuals with psychotic disorders. Symptoms of bipolar disorder can directly contribute to criminal acts, while extreme anxiety or stress can increase the risk of violent behavior due to heightened emotions and impulsivity. On the other hand, being in a prison environment can worsen existing mental health conditions. The harsh realities of prison life, including the potential for violence from inmates or staff, can trigger or worsen mental health issues. Prisons are considered especially inhospitable environments for individuals struggling with mental illness, as reported by the Australian Policy Development Centre. A significant decision was made in the Sydney Supreme Court on May 15, 2023, in the case of Jessica. The court, consisting of Justices Peter Hamill, Christine Adamson, and Richard Kavanagh, decided that Jessica's case should be retried due to exceptional circumstances. A significant factor in this decision was Jessica's unusual behavior following the crime. After beheading her mother, Jessica carried the head into the street and asked emergency services personnel if they could reattach it. This action showed that Jessica's understanding of reality was severely impaired. Several mental health experts, including psychiatrists and a psychologist, testified about Jessica's mental health. Their findings indicated that due to her intellectual disability and autism, she had difficulty distinguishing between right and wrong. As a result, Justice Hamill decided to re-sentence Jessica Camilleri to 16 years in prison, with the chance of parole in 12 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lisa Valdez. Lisa Valdez was born on September 6, 1961, in San Francisco, California. She has an older brother and a loving mother. Although her father was absent from their lives, but Lisa and her mother shared an exceptionally close bond, rarely arguing. Those who knew them admired the harmony in their relationship. During her teenage years, Lisa developed a passion for dancing. She also became interested in IT, which was a relatively new field at the time. Notably, she was an early user of email, using it before many of her friends knew of its existence. This interest significantly influenced her future career path. Following college, Lisa got a job as a software analyst in San Francisco. Her mother later used her savings to purchase a small studio apartment for Lisa in a prestigious neighborhood, which offered a stunning city view. Living alone, Lisa advanced in her career, prioritized family time, and continued dancing, attending weekly practice sessions with her best friend. On May 16, 1998, Lisa, who was 36 at the time, hosted an evening gathering with her mother and some family friends. After the guests departed, her mother helped with the dishes and then headed home. Before leaving, Lisa promised to call her mother the next day, but the call never came. Initially, Lisa's mother thought she was simply busy, especially since she had dance practice scheduled for that day. However, as the day progressed without any communication from Lisa, her mother began to worry. The following day, Lisa's mother tried calling her, but there was no answer. She continued attempting to reach Lisa, but her calls went unanswered. On Monday, the fourth day since they last spoke, Lisa's colleagues contacted her mother to express their concern that Lisa had not shown up for work and was not responding to their calls. This was highly unusual, as Lisa was known for her reliability and always notified her workplace if she needed to take a day off. Lisa's mother grew increasingly concerned, so she decided to visit the apartment complex to check on her. When she arrived, she witnessed a disturbing scene. The building was surrounded by police tape and there were a lot of police officers. She asked the police what was going on, and they told her that earlier that day, some residents had reported a strange smell coming from one of the apartments. The building manager checked and found an unlocked door, then went inside and found a body on the floor, and they called the police. The police then were promptly called to the scene. Police officers quickly identified the victim as Lisa. Her body showed clear signs of trauma and decomposition, indicating she had been murdered several days prior. The presence of blood stains on the floor and bed, along with her partially undressed state and underwear found next to her body, suggested she had been being attacked and sexually abused. The room was in disarray, but further investigation revealed that this was typical of Lisa's living habits. The TV was on, and the air conditioner was set to 78 degrees. No signs of robbery were present, with valuables and jewelry left untouched. However, Lisa's keys and a gym bag were missing. A peculiar detail was the removal of some of Lisa's hair by the attacker, hinting at strong personal motives. The numerous injuries on her body further supported this theory. The detective suspected that the killer might have had a prior relationship with Lisa and cherish a deep-seated hatred for her, given the lack of forced entry and the secure nature of the fenced apartment complex. Additionally, the apartment complex was secured with a fence, and access required either a key or to be let in by a resident. The police began interviewing residents in the apartment building, searching for someone who might have seen the attacker. They quickly found a lead when one of Lisa's neighbors reported that 2 days earlier, upon returning from vacation, he noticed damage to the metal frame of his front door and a faint blood stain. Although he had informed the manager, but they decided not to report it to the police, as it appeared his apartment had not been broken into. Detectives believed the same person who killed Lisa was responsible for the damage to the neighbor's door. However, the motives behind these actions were unclear. One theory was that the killer tried to break into the neighbor's apartment, was caught by Lisa, and subsequently murdered her. Another theory suggested the attempted break-in might have occurred after Lisa's murder, which seemed unusual. Detectives speak with the housekeeper who cleaned Lisa's apartment weekly. 2 days before Lisa's body was found, the housekeeper attempted to enter the apartment, but found the door blocked from the inside. Through a crack in the door, she saw a partially undressed woman on the floor and heard a man's voice. Believing she was interrupting a private moment, she left immediately. Police suspected that Lisa was already dead at this time and the man's voice belonged to her killer, who was still inside the apartment. The housekeeper mentioned a suspicious detail, a black bag with a zipper near the body. However, she was uncertain since she only caught a glimpse. On the inside of Lisa's apartment door, an envelope with cash was taped, untouched. This money was intended for the housekeeper, a frequent habit of Lisa. The fact that the envelope was still there suggests that Lisa was likely attacked after her mother departed, sometime between midnight and the early hours of the morning, which would have been when Lisa normally left the payment. Neighbors from the floor below corroborated these things. They reported hearing thuds and someone descending the stairs, although they didn't see the individual. As detectives searched Lisa's apartment, they discovered an unusual detail: the toilet seat was up, uncommon for a woman living alone. Forensic experts found a partial fingerprint that didn't match Lisa's. The police collected fingerprints from Lisa's acquaintances and relatives who may have visited her apartment, but none matched. This led detectives to believe that the fingerprint might belong to the killer. The medical experts completed their report, revealing new information about Lisa's case. Her body had over 20 stab wounds, but due to decomposition, it was unclear if she had been sexually assaulted. However, defensive wounds on her body suggested that Lisa had attempted to fight off her attacker. Furthermore, skin particles were found under her nails, which were likely from the killer, and were sent to the lab for analysis. In the meantime, forensic experts analyzed evidence from the apartment and discovered a crucial clue: a pillowcase with multiple blood stains. Upon closer examination, it was determined that not all of the blood on the pillowcase belonged to Lisa, as some of the stains were from a different source. As a result, the pillowcase was sent to the lab for further testing. Investigators suggested that the killer may have unintentionally hurt himself while stabbing Lisa, which can happen when using a knife. Supporting this hypothesis was the discovery of 2 bandages from a first aid kit inside the toilet. The killer might have used these to stop his bleeding and potentially left fingerprints on the toilet seat when disposing of the bandages. DNA analysis revealed that the blood on the pillowcase came from an unknown male not listed in the FBI database. This man's DNA also matched skin particles under Lisa's nails and a blood stain on her pillowcase. Despite no matches in the DNA database, detectives obtained the killer's DNA profile. They then compared it to DNA samples from suspects in their system who had committed crimes in Lisa's area and closely examined her acquaintances. Lisa's mother shared information about Lisa's relationship with a man named Albert Ketto, stating they had plans for a date the day following the murder. However, these plans were canceled by Albert a few days beforehand. When detectives questioned Ketto, they noticed a large cut on his hand, which made them suspect him as the killer. And he might have injured themselves while stabbing Lisa. Despite this, Albert denied any involvement in the murder. The detectives took his fingerprints and DNA samples for comparison, but surprisingly, they did not match the blood on the pillowcase or the skin particles found under Lisa's nails. Investigators continued their search for other suspects by reviewing the messages on Lisa's answering machine from the days leading up to the murder. After making a list of 40 people texting Lisa, they found one message particularly suspicious. Just hours before the murder, while Lisa still had guests at her home, a man called her, but she didn't pick up, he leaving a strange message: "You know how it goes, Tita. Hey Lisa, are you home?" When police played this message for one of Lisa's friends, the friend immediately identified the voice as Albert Robinson, a work colleague of Lisa's. Albert had made his feelings for Lisa known, but she had rejected his advances. Despite this, they remained friendly at work and, with Lisa considering him a friend. During the memorial service for Lisa, something else happened. Albert attended the service and delivered a speech that left everyone perplexed. He asserted that he and Lisa were intensely in love and had plans to get married and start a family. However, Lisa's friends and mother disputed Albert's things, stating that they were entirely false. According to them, Lisa had mentioned that Albert had expressed interest in her, but she did not reciprocate his feelings. Lisa's mother also emphasized that Lisa would have confided in her about such significant plans. Albert was questioned by the police and he denied being involved in Lisa's murder. He claimed to love her and said he would never hurt her. However, he refused to give the police his DNA sample and fingerprints, which raised suspicions. As a result, detectives continued to investigate him and look for new evidence. It is possible that Lisa's failure to reciprocate Albert's feelings made him hate her and kill her in revenge. The violent nature of the murder suggested that it was personal, and the fact that the killer cut off some of Lisa's hair and took it with him could be related to Albert's fixation on her. Detectives got a search warrant for Albert's house and found it filled with dozens of Lisa's photos, further evidence of his obsession. Despite this, he continued to deny any involvement in the murder. He voluntarily provided his fingerprints and DNA, which were sent to the lab for analysis. However, the lab results showed no match with the DNA and fingerprints found at the crime scene. As a result, he was cleared as a suspect, and the investigation continued. Years went by with no new leads, and the case remained unsolved. Investigators regularly checked DNA and fingerprint databases, hoping the killer would be caught for another crime, but there were no matches. Police were initially baffled that the perpetrator of such a heinous crime did not appear in any databases, so they doubted it was his first serious offense. Despite ongoing searches over the years, the police couldn't find any matches. Lisa's mother made multiple television appearances, pleading for anyone with information to come forward, yet detectives remained without new leads. In 2010, detectives discovered the FBI had begun utilizing a new DNA technology to identify suspects by comparing their DNA samples with those in the database to find relatives. This method, unlike genetic genealogy which emerged later, was only effective for locating close relatives, such as a father or brother. With no other leads, police requested a comparison in 2011 and waited. On September 2nd, lead detective Ive received a call from the FBI. They said that when the experts retested the DNA sample, they got a perfect match. The DNA from blood and skin particles under her nails matched a 52-year-old man named Anthony Hughes, who had recently been added to the FBI database. Anthony had a lengthy criminal record that went back decades, but previously, his crimes didn't qualify for his DNA to be included in the FBI database. However, due to updates in legislation, it became mandatory for individuals convicted of crimes in California to provide DNA samples, irrespective of how minor the offense was. Anthony's DNA sample was added to the database following his arrest for a minor shoplifting offense. In addition to his DNA, his fingerprints were also entered into the database, and they were found to match a fingerprint discovered on Lisa's toilet seat. Specialists were even able to pinpoint which specific finger left the print with relative ease. Before arresting Anthony, detectives searched for more evidence linking him to the crime. They stumbled upon a new clue. 13 years prior, police had reviewed messages left on Lisa's answering machine, but only those received before her murder. Now, after all these years, detectives found that Anthony had left a message for Lisa just a day after her death. The message itself was unremarkable and didn't raise suspicions. However, if the police had investigated Anthony at that time, they won't just find out his dense criminal history but also another important piece of information. Upon reviewing Lisa's belongings, detectives discovered Anthony's phone number in her address book, which confirmed that Lisa and Anthony knew each other. Further investigation, including conversations with Lisa's friends, revealed that Lisa and Anthony had dated briefly in high school. With this new information, detectives felt they had sufficient grounds to question Anthony. However, since he didn't have a fixed address at the time, they decided to approach him cautiously to prevent him from fleeing. When they arrested him, they initially told him that he was being investigated in connection with a series of robberies in San Francisco. Anthony surrendered without resistance. During the interrogation, detectives initially asked Anthony about the robberies. They then inquired about his relationship with Lisa. Initially, Anthony denied knowing Lisa, but when shown her photo, he acknowledged that they had known each other in high school. He also claimed that he hadn't seen her since the late 1980s. Detectives spent several hours questioning Anthony about his relationship with Lisa and whether he had seen her recently. When investigators confronted Anthony about the DNA evidence found in Lisa's apartment from 1998, his response was unexpected. He burst into tears and requested a pen and paper, seemingly prepared to confess. However, instead of writing a confession, he began hitting himself with the pen. Authorities had to restrain him as he continued crying and shouting, claiming he was being framed for a crime he didn't commit. Following this, Anthony was charged with Lisa's murder, and her family was informed that her killer had finally been caught. The trial was delayed by 4 years. Then, when it began, Anthony appeared confident, even smirking. However, later he began displaying religious symbols, such as carrying a Bible and wearing a cross. Detectives believed this was a tactic to sway the jury. Anthony's lawyer argued that he was physically incapable of committing the crime. A medical condition, diagnosed 5 years prior, had weakened his muscles, making it extremely difficult to perform repetitive movements. The lawyer argued that given this condition, Anthony could not have inflicted the more than 20 stab wounds found on Lisa. According to the medical report that year, Anthony's health condition was recovered well at the time of the murder. The prosecution had strong evidence that placed Anthony at the scene case, including his skin under Lisa's fingernails, his blood on a pillowcase, and his fingerprint on the toilet seat. However, regardless of the evidence against him, Anthony consistently denied having seen Lisa since the late 80s. The prosecution presented a theory that Anthony had gone to Lisa's home, attempted to initiate intimate contact with she, and when she rejected, he brutally murdered her. After the crime, he cut off a piece of her hair and took it with him as he fled. Anthony Hughes was ultimately given a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 16 years. In 2031, when he will be 72 years old. Anthony is currently serving his sentence in prison. However, he still maintains his innocence and says he was wrongfully convicted. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kristen Rossum. Ralph and Constance Rossum were dedicated parents to their 3 children, prioritizing their kids' development and well-being above all else. Their children were educated from a young age, attended good schools, and they encouraging their children to explore their interests through a variety of extracurricular activities. However, their daughter Kristen struggled to cope with the pressure of living up to family expectations. Feeling overwhelmed and desperate to escape, Kristen began to rebel by lying, skipping school, and finding ways to escape her temporary problems. At first, she felt more comfortable when she drank alcohol, but over time, the effects of alcohol stopped being effective for her. As a result, she turned to the controlled substance methamphetamine and eventually became dependent on it. Methamphetamine, commonly referred to as meth, is widely considered the most addictive illicit substance in the United States. Its use often leading to paranoia, impaired judgment, and euphoria. Kristen's parents noticed her erratic behavior and, in a conversation, discovered she'd been struggling with the substance since high school. Her entire family, who were highly educated, were shocked and deeply affected by this behavior. After months of conflict with her parents, 17-year-old Kristen secretly ran away. While vacationing in Mexico with friends, she met a tall, handsome man named Gregory DeVillers, who was 7 years her senior. Over time, they fell in love with each other. He helped her get settled and get her health back. With Gregory's support, she turned her life around by getting a job at the local forensic service as a toxicology assistant. Her skills impressed the employer and her addiction was forgotten. As a forensic assistant, Kristen graduated from college with honors. Her teachers and employers praised her and gave her the Best Student Award without knowing the reason why she loved her chosen profession. After 5 years of dating Gregory, they had their grand wedding on June 5, 1999. Kristen's parents loved Gregory dearly and were relieved that their daughter had overcome the pain of her past and was now on the path toward a bright and fulfilling future. In March 2000, Kristen was hired by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office as a toxicologist, specializing in analyzing body fluids for narcotics. Gregory was working in the biotechnology industry at the time. But Kristen soon grew tired of her dull and monotonous life, and she began to look for excitement elsewhere. She met a new co-worker, Michael Robertson, who had just been appointed as the department head. Although Michael was married, they unexpectedly developed strong feelings for each other. They couldn't keep their relationship a secret for long. Gregory discovered many love letters between his wife and Michael. The marriage relationship was getting worse, yet Gregory remained hopeful that it could be salvaged. Understanding his wife's weakness, he made an effort to support and rescue her from her difficulties, hoping to mend their relationship. This time Kristen did not want to be saved. She asked for a divorce on Monday morning, November 6, 2000. Kristen was getting ready for work as usual. Gregory was sick and at home. Kristen was very tired worrying about her husband. In the days after their breakup talk, he was indifferent and unusually calm. Kristen informed Gregory's workplace that he was sick, and then she also visited her husband during her lunch break. Gregory fell asleep at 9:22 p.m. That same day, Kristen called the emergency services to report that her husband Gregory was not breathing. He had most likely committed suicide as he was home alone. Kristen was crying on the phone and she lost her temper, so she did not listen to the dispatcher's instructions about performing an autopsy and performing first aid on her husband. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene at 10:19 p.m. Gregory was pronounced dead. He was lying on the bedroom floor with his torso exposed, surrounded by scattered rose petals. An examination of the room revealed evidence suggesting that Gregory taking a fatal amount of multiple prescription medications. Empty painkiller bottles were scattered around the room, and torn wedding photos were found on his bed. When questioned, Kristen said she told Gregory she wanted to separate the night before, just over a year after their wedding. She felt regret about the marriage, thinking they rushed into it too quickly. Kristen also found Gregory too controlling and she wanted more space. Gregory's death was initially ruled a suicide, caused by a powerful sedative. Kristen signed the cremation papers, but Gregory's family and friends were skeptical. They had noticed no changes in his personality or mood, and they believed he would never use those fatal drugs. The family's doubts led them to try to stop the cremation and request an autopsy. Their persistence eventually led investigators to consider the possibility that Gregory's death was not a suicide, but a murder. An investigation into Gregory's death revealed the fentanyl, a painkiller 150 times more potent than morphine, along with smaller amounts of other substances including clonazepam and trace. Initially, the cause of death was suspected to be an overdose of oxycodone, often referred to as heroin, but further investigation pointed to fentanyl as the lethal dose. A substance can provide pain relief and produce a feeling of euphoria. However, it can also slow down breathing and be fatal if not treated in time. Because of the strong effects of clonazepam and other substances found in Gregory's body, investigators speculate that someone else intentionally gave him a fatal dose of fentanyl. Kristen became the prime suspect due to her extensive knowledge and access to powerful prescription medications like fentanyl. During questioning, Kristen's disheveled appearance and history of substance abuse raised suspicions about her potential involvement in Gregory's death. Her own testimony revealed inconsistencies on the day her husband died. Initially, Kristen told medical staff that he was not taking any medications, but later changed her statement to suggest that he may have taken oxycodone at the hospital. The change in her story, combined with her knowledge and access to powerful prescription drugs, supported the argument that Kristen was involved in her husband's death. On November 8, the police received a call from Russ Lowe, a coworker of Kristen's. Russ revealed that Kristen was having an affair with her boss. Further investigation uncovered evidence of Kristen's relationship with her boss, Michael. This evidence consisted of affectionate emails and computer documents. Notably, the documents also revealed Michael's knowledge of phenol, a substance that later became significant in the murder case. Kristen and Michael's relationship became a key aspect of the investigation. It is suspected that Gregory became a threat to Michael and Kristen because he knew that Kristen had access to the laboratory and that she had secretly used narcotics. Michael covered for Kristen, supporting her actions. During the investigation, Michael admitted to being aware of Kristen's drug addiction at the time. Although no charges were filed against Michael and Kristen, but they were both fired for violating several rules. Kristen's troubles started in January when police searched her home for evidence of drug use. Initially, she was arrested but later released on bail. A new proof shed light on the investigation: Kristen's diary, uncovered during the initial examination. Kristen didn't write the diary for personal reflection, but rather as a way to present herself to others and maintain her innocence, while making her husband Gregory's death look like a perfect suicide. Notably, on the day of his death, Kristen bought a rose to pair with lingerie that suggested infidelity. A medical examination of Gregory's body revealed that he had been unconscious for at least 6 hours before his death. The estimated time of death was likely about an hour to an hour and a half before it was officially confirmed. Furthermore, bruises were found around the needle marks on his arm. During the investigation, a short supply of the lethal substance was discovered at Kristen's workplace, along with other narcotic substances. A suspicious vial of phenol was also found, leading police to suspect that Kristen had poisoned Gregory without his knowledge. Kristen was arrested on June 25, 2001, and charged with first-degree murder. After spending 6 months in custody, she was released on bail. The prosecution's main argument in her first trial centered around the motive for the murder. They claimed that Kristen killed Gregory to protect her reputation because he threatened to expose her drug addiction and her affair with Michael. The prosecution alleged that Kristen used a powerful synthetic opioid called fentanyl to poison Gregory. Fentanyl is 80 times more potent than morphine. It was suggested that Kristen initially attempted to kill Gregory with a different substance, clonazepam, but when this failed, she used fentanyl. To make it seem like Gregory had taken his own life, Kristen staged the scene by ripping out pages from her diary and placing personal items, including rose petals and a wedding photograph, around his body. As a biochemistry graduate, Kristen leveraged her knowledge of chemistry and drugs to orchestrate Gregory's death. The prosecution also claimed that Kristen deliberately withheld information about the fentanyl from her colleagues in the medical examiner's office, aiming to mislead them into believing Gregory's death was self-inflicted before his autopsy. The developments of what happened that day are reproduced as follows. On the morning of November 6th, she contacted Gregory's workplace to report his absence, then headed to her workplace. Her colleagues stated that around 9 a.m., she began her workday. However, they recalled finding her crying in their Michael's office about an hour later. The manager of the apartment building where Kristen and Gregory were staying witnessed Kristen returning home at 12:10 p.m. Shortly after, at 12:41 p.m., Kristen went to a nearby grocery store and bought various items. Among these purchases was a credit card statement. This confirmed her emergence at the store several hours before Gregory's death. Additionally, Kristen made multiple phone calls to Michael. The San Diego County Medical Examiner, Dr. Blackburn, who performed Gregory's autopsy, testified that Gregory had been deceased for at least an hour by the time paramedics arrived. The examiner also disclosed that Gregory was suffering from early-stage bronchopneumonia at the time of death. Breathing difficulties occur when lung secretions accumulate, often as a result of poor breathing. This can happen when a person is unconscious or taking very shallow breaths. Dr. Blackburn presented additional evidence, stating that Gregory's body contained a significant amount of urine in his bladder at the time of death. This accumulation would have caused severe discomfort if Gregory was conscious, suggesting he likely struggled to breathe for 6 to 12 hours before his death. Furthermore, Dr. Blackburn found it unlikely that Gregory, in an unconscious state, could have scattered rose petals on himself. During the trial, Dr. Blackburn also testified that the level of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not high enough to be considered an overdose, and therefore would not have been the cause of death. Dr. Theodore Stanley, testifying for the prosecution, stated that fentanyl, a powerful and fast-acting painkiller, can have severe side effects leading to respiratory arrest. The onset of its effects varies based on the administration method. The fastest method of maximal effect is intravenous administration, which occurs within about 5 minutes. Intramuscular injection results in maximum effect within 15 to 20 minutes. This is followed by oral administration, with maximum effect within 20 to 30 minutes. The slowest method of maximal effect is the transdermal patch, which takes about 16 hours. Dr. Theodore testified before the court that fentanyl is typically not taken orally because the liver breaks down approximately 65% of the substance. As a result, only 35% of fentanyl is able to enter the bloodstream. However, when questioned about how fentanyl was detected in Gregory's body, neither Dr. Blackburn nor Dr. Theodore was able to provide a clear explanation. Dr. Theodore found that the amounts of fentanyl in Gregory's body, combined with the fact that Gregory had been unconscious and breathing shallowly for hours before his death, suggested that the fentanyl may have been given to Gregory by someone else. During the trial, the prosecution had difficulty explaining to the jury exactly how Kristen poisoned her husband. However, there was evidence that she may have applied a fentanyl patch to Gregory's arm while he was sleeping. Kristen's former workplace provided a crucial piece of evidence, as 15 fentanyl patches were discovered missing from the lab. While Kristen maintained her innocence, her defense team accepted that fentanyl was the cause of Gregory's death, but they suggested an alternative explanation. According to the defense, Gregory intentionally gave himself a fatal dose due to feelings of desperation about family problems. In court, Kristen recounted her of events on the morning of November 6th. She recalled waking up to find Gregory in a state of distress. Gregory called his employer at 7:42 a.m. to report his illness and informed them that he would not be going to work. Kristen claimed she left for work, but returned to their apartment during her lunch break to check on Gregory. When she asked him why he was so upset, Gregory replied that he was feeling unwell due to taking oxycodone and clonazepam and planned to stay home and rest. Kristen returned to work after that and came home around 8 p.m. Upon arrival, she found Gregory in bed and assumed he was asleep. She went to take a shower, and when came out, she tried to wake him, but when she touched him she felt cold. Kristen then immediately called emergency services. During questioning, the prosecutor questioned the validity of Kristen's explanation. She admitted to lying in the past and lying about her drug use, which made her testimony seem suspect. Autopsy and toxicology results showed that Gregory had been unconscious for approximately 6 to 8 hours before his death, contradicting Kristen's initial claim that they had lunch together that day. The defense argued that the concentration of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not fatal on its own. However, they acknowledged that the combined effects of oxycodone, an opiate, and clonazepam, a benzodiazepine, could be more potent than the effects of either substance alone. They suggested that Gregory may have accidentally taken the drugs, but they could not explain why the high concentration of fentanyl was found in his body, which remains unexplained. After 8 hours of deliberation, the jury found Kristen guilty of first-degree murder and special circumstance murder due to poisoning. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kristen claimed innocence and appealed the verdict in the appellate court, where a critical mistake by her own defense team was discovered. Her lawyers had admitted that fentanyl caused the death but failed to test the autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. This important test will help determine whether Gregory ingested fentanyl and whether the fentanyl in his body was due to contamination from laboratory testing rather than what he actually ate in. If fentanyl was only detected in the samples and not in Gregory's body, the prosecution's theory that fentanyl caused his death would be incorrect. The appeal also revealed a chain of custody violation regarding the samples. Although the samples were marked and placed in a cardboard box, the containers were not sealed. They were left at the medical examiner's office for approximately 36 hours before being shipped to the sheriff's forensic lab due to the recipient's absence. During this time, the samples were potentially accessible to anyone with a key to the medical examiner's office building, raising concerns that someone may have contaminated the samples. Kristen's appeal contends that any individual with a motive to falsify evidence could have added the substance to the sample. A panel of judges from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed Kristen's case and concluded that her lawyers had made a serious error. The prosecution claimed Gregory died of a fentanyl overdose. Kristen's lawyers, however, did not contest that claim. Instead, they accepted the fentanyl overdose explanation. The judges did not overturn the verdict but sent the case back to the lower court to decide whether the defense's error could have changed the outcome of the trial. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling stating that federal courts must respect the decisions made by state courts in similar cases. This ruling impacts Kristen's case, as the court has voted against a hearing and her appeal was denied, leaving her in custody. Kristen's trial was not the only part of the case. She had a co-defendant named Michael. Although he was not in the U.S. for the trial, he is still a part of the case and risks being arrested if he returns. However, he may be eligible for a $100,000 bail. Michael has been living in Australia, where he works as a forensic toxicologist. Kristen Rossum was arrested in 2003 and received a life sentence without parole. Gregory's family is now suing the county for allowing Kristen to steal a lethal dose of the same drug without detection, and they blame the county's negligence for her crime. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rowena Irani. Rowena Irani was born on February 18, 1994, in Karachi, Pakistan, to parents Tarun and Bam Irani. In 2004, when Rowena was 10 years old, her family moved to Wichita, Kansas, in search of better opportunities. The goal was to provide Rowena and her older brother, Rashid, with a brighter future in America. However, the 9.11 tragedy 3 years earlier had created a climate of prejudice that affected the Irani family, making it difficult for Rowena and Rashid to form friendships due to the hostility they faced. Despite the initial difficulties, Rowena and Rashid eventually settled in and expanded their social circle. Rowena joined her high school's ROTC program and drill team, which helped her develop skills, even though she didn't plan to pursue a military career. After a tough start, Rowena blossomed into a strong-willed, friendly, and caring individual. Rowena graduated from Wichita Heights High School in 2012 and enrolled at Wichita State University, choosing to live at home while pursuing a degree in psychology. Her goal was to earn a master's degree and become a counselor for teenagers. Rowena's mother was extremely proud of her dedication to her studies. From the start, the Irani family's sacrifices clearly had a positive impact on their children. Rowena, in particular, wanted to help others reach their full potential. She started working at the Wichita Children's Home, a place for neglected, abused, and emotionally distressed youth. Rowena formed strong bonds with the children, showing her remarkable ability to understand and support them. Rowena made the children feel welcome and cherished, creating a sense of security. Every morning, Rowena would gently wake the children, and every evening, she would bid them farewell. The children looked forward to sharing their daily experiences with her, no matter how small. Rowena also helped the children set goals and find ways to achieve them, showing her dedication to their well-being. Rowena demonstrated a strong commitment to helping troubled youth. and her outstanding academic record as a psychology major indicated she had found her purpose in supporting others. She seemed to be living the American dream her parents had sought. However, problems in her personal life soon arose, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. In May 2016, Rowena reconnected with Dane Owens, a family friend, at her brother's wedding. Dane came from a wealthy Kansas family and had joined the U.S. Army after high school. His military service ended abruptly due to a severe traumatic brain injury from an explosion. After a medical discharge, Dane attended Kansas State University, where he met Rowena. They soon developed strong feelings for each other. But problems soon arose due to Dane's behavior. He was possessive, controlling, and had a quick temper. People close to Rowena said that Dane became obsessed with the idea of marrying her and starting a family right away, even though she wasn't sure about it. At 22, Rowena wanted to finish college before making such a big decision. Dane's insistence on marriage and his intense behavior scared Rowena, her feel like the relationship was moving too fast. When she asked for space, Dane wrote a disturbing letter, begging her not to leave him and hinting that he might harm himself if she did. This led Rowena to end the relationship. At first, it seemed like Dane accepted Rowena's decision when she reiterated that she wasn't ready for marriage or starting a family. However, just 1 week after giving her space, Dane started pressuring her again about getting engaged, planning a wedding, and having kids. His actions made it clear that he saw Rowena as a prize to be won. Instead of supporting her education and career, Dane seemed determined to limit Rowena to a domestic role. Rowena is worried about her relationship with Dane because she feels he is too controlling of her, and this makes her wonder if they are really a good couple. By September 2016, Dane's increasing aggression had become alarming, prompting Rowena to confide in her brother, Rashid, a police officer. She shared several disturbing incidents, including Dane's claims of committing brutal killings during his military service. He even bragged about murdering women and children while deployed in Afghanistan. Rowena found these revelations deeply disturbing. Furthermore, Dane had expressed his intention to kill an ex-girlfriend who had ended their relationship. He confessed that following the breakup, he became consumed by a desire for revenge and struggled with emotional instability, to the point where he even contemplated committing murder. Rashid agreed with Rowena's assessment that Dane posed a genuine threat and he seemed capable of violent acts against her. On September 23, Rowena ended her relationship with Dane. She blocked his phone number and social media profiles to distance herself. However, Dane refused to accept the breakup and started planning his revenge. Despite recovering from shoulder surgery and being unable to handle a firearm properly, Dane bought a .45 caliber handgun. On October 3, over a week after the breakup, he secretly visited Rowena's residence while her family was away. Surveillance cameras caught him parking his vehicle away from the house and approaching stealthily, hiding the firearm in a sling due to his injured arm. Dane entered the house through an unlocked door and waited for Rowena. When Rowena appeared, he aimed his gun and fatally shot her in the head. This was a deliberate and carefully planned violent act committed by someone who was excessively controlling. After shooting Rowena, Dane quickly left the house through the back door and drove away to avoid being caught. During his escape, he stopped to get rid of important evidence, including the handgun magazine and Rowena's phone, in various ponds in Wichita. Meanwhile, Rowena was left alone in her home, severely injured and bleeding heavily, for several hours. At around 4 p.m., her mother, Tarun, returned home after being dropped off from work. Tarun was worried because Rowena usually picked her up. But she couldn't reach Rowena by phone. She got a ride from a coworker and went home, where she found Rowena lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by a large amount of blood, with severe head injuries. Tarun immediately called for emergency services, but it was too late to save Rowena. Rowena's condition was extremely serious due to a gunshot wound and significant blood loss. She fought for her life at Wesley Medical Center for nearly 24 hours, while her family stayed by her side, hoping for a miracle. Tragically, she passed away on October 4th at just 22 years old. Her promising life was tragically ended by a violent act. Despite their intense grief, Rowena's family was determined to find justice for her murder. Rashid quickly focused the investigation on Dane, Rowena's ex-boyfriend, who had been causing her a great deal of fear before her death. Dane was soon found and brought in for questioning. After being arrested and taken to the police station, he admitted to holding a grudge against Rowena for breaking up with him. When questioned further, Dane tried to claim that Rowena's death was an accident, but the evidence proved this was not true. Dane told investigators that he had shown up at Rowena's home unannounced, carrying a loaded .45 caliber pistol and hoping to talk about getting back together. However, Dane claimed that the firearm was hidden in his arm sling and he never intended to threaten or harm Rowena when he entered the house looking for her. He said when Rowena suddenly appeared, he was startled, causing a moment of panic due to post-traumatic stress disorder from time in the military. Dean alleged that he accidentally fired a shot in her direction. He explained to detectives that he was left shocked and horrified after the bullet accidentally struck Rowena in the head, resulting in her immediate collapse to the ground. Panicked, he fled the scene and later got rid of the evidence. Despite his claim that the shooting was an accident caused by a reflex, detectives did not believe him. The security footage and his admission of sneaking up on Rowena with a loaded gun, his attempt to dispose of evidence, and the execution-style gunshot wound to Rowena's head all suggested a planned and deliberate murder. In November 2018, Dane Owens stood trial for Rowena's murder after years of delays, with the case being heard by a jury. The prosecution presented case with substantial evidence, leaving no doubt about Dane's guilt. They portrayed Dane as a possessive and controlling individual who turned violent when rejected. Dane's delusional fantasies led him to end Rowena's life. After only 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Dane guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated burglary, resulting in a life sentence in Kansas. Dane was punished for taking Rowena's life due to his wounded pride. He will not be eligible for parole for 25 years, and his chances of release are low due to the brutality of his actions. He is currently serving his sentence at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas. Rowena's life was ended by someone she once loved. It's heartbreaking to think of the terrible actions of Dane, who took Rowena's life, depriving her of a bright future at such a young age. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Anna Rybkina. Anna Rybkina, a 27-year-old woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, she was a bright and ambitious individual from a good family. Her outlook on life was optimistic, and she yearned for love. Anna dreamed of getting married, starting a family, and building a home. Those who knew her remembered her infectious sense of humor and delightful personality. However, in 2016, Anna's world was turned upside down when her high school sweetheart ended their relationship of 7 years. Despite her heartbreak, she was determined to find true love and live a happy, fulfilling life. Anna decided to try online dating and signed up for several websites. She quickly matched with a man named William Hargrove on a Russian dating site. William, a 26-year-old from Oregon. He showered her with kindness and compliments, making an effort to be present for her despite the distance between them. People who know William describe him as a charismatic and humorous person. As Anna and William's online relationship progressed, they spoke every day and became more serious over the course of a few months. They shared many common interests, and Anna and William got along very well. William was the sweetest, he kept sending her flowers. Soon, they started talking about meeting in person. The chemistry was already there over the cell phone. Anna and William decided to meet in person, taking their months-long relationship one step further. In December 2016, Anna booked a flight to visit William in Oregon. However, there was a mix-up. Anna had accidentally booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time the mistake was discovered, Anna had already arrived in Maine. Determined to spend the Christmas holidays with William, Anna rebooked her flight and arrived in Oregon just in time. William was there to greet her at the airport. Over the next 10 days, they experienced the ultimate festive romance. William also introduced Anna to his friends. And they shared a magical New Year's Eve countdown together, sealing their connection with a romantic kiss at midnight. At the end of Anna's 10-day visit, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was already involved with someone else, his landlord, Michelle Chavez. Michelle was a 33-year-old married woman with 2 kids, but that didn't stop her and William's romantic relationship, which had been going on for over a year. When Anna visited William, she met Michelle, who was introduced to her as William's landlord, unaware of the true nature of their relationship. Michelle seemed to be aware of William's intentions to propose to Anna, but she didn't reveal their secret, possibly because she believed William would never leave her. Anna had returned to Russia after getting engaged to William and posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, revealing the shocking news. Michelle was not only angry that her boyfriend, William, was engaged to another woman, but Michelle had also planned to leave her husband for him. In fact, Michelle had already taken off her wedding ring and given it to William as a symbol of her commitment. What Michelle didn't know was that William had given Anna the same ring that Michelle had given him. When Michelle confronted William about the engagement, he downplayed the situation, claiming that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement. However, on March 1, 2017, Anna returned to Oregon, ready to start her new life with William, bringing her wedding dress and a suitcase with her. She had even quit her job, expecting to be with William forever. Michelle was unhappy about the situation. Anna's mother, Yelena, had previously expressed concerns about her daughter moving to a new country for a man she barely knew. Yelena thought Anna was moving too quickly, but Anna insisted she was in love and didn't see the need to wait. Yelena eventually gave her blessing. However, Michelle was furious when she realized Anna's visit was actually a permanent move. She asked William to find a new place to live, as she didn't want the engaged couple staying with her. William agreed and rented an apartment for himself and Anna. Despite this, William continued to secretly visit Michelle, reassuring her of his commitment to her and downplaying his relationship with Anna. Michelle grew increasingly worried about how serious Anna and William's relationship was becoming, so she decided to take action. She contacted Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on behind her back. Anna shared with William everything Michelle had told her, but he dismissed it as mere jealousy from an ex-girlfriend. Anna trusted William's explanation and decided to move forward with their wedding plans. They had set a date of March 23 to get married by the sea. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, but the officiant failed to arrive. After a long wait, they returned home. According to William, the officiant was ill, and Anna believed him. However, William had been clear about his feelings. He didn't love Anna and saw her as unimportant. Despite this, Anna refused to accept the reality of the situation. Michelle was exhausted with the situation. On April 15, she had reached her limit and told William he had to make a decision, her or Anna. Michelle made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate him leading a double life any longer. Michelle told William that if Anna wasn't out of the picture by Thursday, April 20th, she would take drastic action. When she said she would build a snowman, Michelle meant that she would harm or kill Anna and hide the body in a remote, cold location where it would never be found. After her conversation with William, Michelle couldn't reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna and left him several voicemails to express her feelings. However, the next day, Sunday, April 16th, William called Michelle and told her that he was now single. He explained that he and Anna had broken up and she was returning to Russia. It was Easter Sunday, and Michelle had been attending a family gathering. However, Michelle left her family's celebration to meet William. They of them reconnected and reaffirmed their relationship by being intimate in William's car. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in a forest, but the investigators had no idea who she was. She didn't have any identification on her and had only been in the state for about a month, making it difficult to start the investigation. There was no murder weapon at the scene, but among the trash scattered around her body was a clear plastic bag. Inside the bag, detectives found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a used KFC chicken wrapper. The KFC receipt turned out to be a crucial piece of evidence. The receipt contained the date, time stamp, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas, the owner of the debit card. Kevin, it turned out, was a close friend of William's. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he and William were very close. Kevin also mentioned that he and William had a tradition of going to KFC for lunch every Friday. The receipt was from a purchase made about a week before William was questioned by the police. During the questioning, the police mentioned that they had found garbage from KFC in the trash, which they believed was from the previous week. William acknowledged that he and Kevin regularly went to KFC on Fridays. It was revealed that Kevin had paid for his meal with a credit card, while William had paid in cash. Kevin had previously told the police about William's complicated relationship situation, which had only come to light during the investigation into Anna's death. Kevin also mentioned that William had borrowed his shotgun, but had not returned it. According to Kevin, William had said he wanted to borrow the shotgun to go to the woods and relieve some stress. After hearing Kevin's statement, the police began to focus their attention on William and Michelle. From the day Anna died, William had been acting strangely and suspiciously. Following the death of his fiancée, Mr. William Hargrove was witnessed displaying unusual behavior. He withdrew funds from her bank account and spent them on items such as cigars and Star Wars Legos. He justified these purchases to his friend Kevin by saying he was trying to alleviate his grief. However, this behavior was compounded and Mr. Hargrove began researching time travel, even going so far as to offer his soul in exchange for the opportunity to travel back in time. When asked why he wanted to travel back in time, Mr. Hargrove explained that he wanted to return to April 16th to prevent his friend from making a mistake. However, this claim appears dubious, as on the same date, Mr. Hargrove was recorded crying in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had left him. This raises doubts about the sincerity of his claim, particularly as he had been living with Michelle, despite her not being his anymore. William was taken into custody by the police and questioned. Initially, they asked him about his whereabouts on April 16th. William stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. However, when questioned about his relationship with Anna, William claimed they were just acquaintances, having met while walking in downtown Corvallis. He told the police that they had gone on 2 dates, but he had made it clear to her that he wasn't interested in pursuing a romantic relationship. According to William, he last saw Anna in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused tension with his actual partner, Michelle. The police then asked William about the trash found near the area where his acquaintance, Anna, was last seen. William admitted to littering, but claimed that he had disposed of his trash, including KFC waste and a trash can. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators who questioned William Hargrove, revealed that trash that implicated him had been found near Anna's body. Initially, William pretended to be shocked and distressed upon hearing this. However, his demeanor quickly changed and he requested a lawyer. Despite denying any involvement, William was arrested on April 19, 2 days after the body of Anna Rybkina was discovered. Following William's arrest, Michelle was also brought in for questioning. When questioned about her whereabouts on April 16, Michelle provided a rehearsed alibi, stating that she and William spent the day driving together after he picked her up from her mother's house. However, her story changed later as she admitted to lying initially. She then claimed that William had planned to call and pick her up, but never followed through. During the interrogation, the police revealed shocking information to Michelle. Her boyfriend of a year and a half was now in custody for murder. Her initial reaction was surprisingly calm, but when the investigator pointed out her unusual reaction, Michelle's emotions finally surfaced. William was facing serious charges, including murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft. His trial began in October 2019, nearly a year after his indictment in June 2018. The prosecution was pushing for the maximum penalty, presenting a strong case against William with evidence and a clear motive. However, the defense argued that William was innocent and that Michelle, his scorned lover, was the real culprit. Evidence suggested that William had a motive to commit the crime, as he was being pressured by another lover to choose between Anna and Michelle. Additionally, records showed that William and Anna had driven together in the same car on the day of the murder. Furthermore, cell phone records placed William near the crime scene at 4:30 p.m. on the day of the murder, near Logging Road. The gun used to kill Anna was discovered in William's car, with only his fingerprints on it. William was using Anna's money to go shopping and pay his car insurance. He was even caught withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. According to the prosecution, William had driven Anna to a secluded forest area, where he killed her with his shotgun in a deliberate and calculated manner. The motive, they argued, was that William had to choose between Anna and Michelle, and he chose to eliminate Anna. Michelle explained how she met William and the nature of their relationship. She was a late-night cab driver, and her husband was a university instructor. However, their marriage was loveless. One evening, she met William at the bar where he worked. She began a romantic relationship with him. Over time, they grew extremely close, and William even rented a room in her house to be nearer to her. Michelle and William had an open relationship. When Anna first appeared, Michelle was not worried. However, when Anna visited more often, Michelle felt threatened, especially when she saw her wedding ring on Anna's finger. Michelle forced William to choose between her or Anna, but she insisted that she had nothing to do with William's actions that hurt Anna. She stressed that she never intended for Anna to be hurt or worse, killed. Michelle addressed the defense's allegations against her. She explained that the "building a snowman" threat was a joke, albeit an extreme one. She admitted that her cell phone was found in the forest, but claimed that William had driven her there without her knowledge of his intentions. Finally, Michelle stated that William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by authorities, and she had kept it for him because he was her partner. After nearly a month of court appearances, the judge requested a verdict from the jury. Deliberations took under 3 hours, and ultimately, the defense was unable to link Michelle to Anna's death. Unlike William, Michelle had no forensic evidence tying her to the crime scene or the weapon. Multiple witnesses corroborated her alibi, confirming that she was at her mother's house celebrating Easter at the time of the incident. William pleaded not guilty, but due to overwhelming evidence, he was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. His lawyer indicated that they would file an appeal. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Marisela Botella Valadez. Marisela Botella Valadez was born in 1997 in Seattle, Washington. As the eldest of 2 children in a Latin American family, she was known for being a kind, outgoing young woman with many friends. She excelled in school and went on to attend a prestigious university after graduating. Maricela was a stunning young woman with a petite frame, long brunette hair, and big brown eyes. She was always the center of attention and loved being around people, often attending lively parties and making the most of every day. On October 3, 2020, Maricela traveled to Dallas to visit old friends, but she planned to return by Monday morning. Her brother was supposed to pick her up from the airport on October 5th, and they would head to the university together. However, when the plane arrived, Maricela was nowhere to be found. A search for the missing student began when her brother realized she wasn't among the passengers who had disembarked from the flight. He tried to call her, but her phone was turned off. He then contacted their parents to inform them of the situation. Maricela's disappearance was unusual, as she was a responsible and serious young woman who would not normally miss university classes without warning. Maricela's family reached out to her friends in Dallas to gather information about her possible whereabouts and her last known location. Their efforts led them to a popular club in the city, where she was spotted partying with friends the night before her disappearance. While there, she had met a man named Chuck and they had danced and socialized together over drinks. After that, they of them left the club, and Maricela was not seen again. When her family was unable to reach her by phone, they grew extremely concerned and frightened, prompting them to quickly report her disappearance to the police. She had purchased tickets for a flight to Seattle, but she never boarded the plane. Her whereabouts since that night were unknown. To investigate further, it was crucial to identify the new person she had met, their destination, and whether she had left with them voluntarily. Reviewing surveillance footage from outside the club, authorities observed Maricela exiting with a young man, but his face was not clearly visible on the video. According to the footage, Maricela appeared to be walking with a man voluntarily before getting into a black Audi car and driving off in an unknown direction. Several days had passed since her disappearance, and she had not contacted anyone, logged into her social media accounts, or made any transactions on her bank cards. The police urgently needed to identify the stranger she was with to determine where to search for them. One of her friends reported that the companion might be named Chuck, but this information was not enough. However, street camera footage helped investigators determine the direction the car had traveled. Further review of supermarket security footage revealed that they had stopped to shop, appearing happy and affectionate towards each other. The footage showed Maricela selecting drinks and candies, while he paid for the items using a card in the name of Charles Beltran. It became clear that Maricela had left with Beltran, a 31-year-old musician who was gaining popularity as a local rap star. However, Beltran had a troubled past, having been to prison twice for robbery and armed assault. He had been released on parole after serving less than 3 years and was on the verge of releasing his own music album. An investigation revealed that Maricela's phone had been active at a specific location on the night she went missing. The location was linked to a house owned by a woman named Lisa Dyke, who was renting a room to Beltran. When police and an FBI agent investigating Maricela's disappearance visited the house, they found it empty. The police were only able to reach Lisa Dyke by phone, as she said she was out of state for work. She confirmed that Charles Beltran had been renting a room in her home, but claimed he had moved out about 2 weeks ago. She also stated that she had no idea where he was after that. They searched the house where he used to live and made several alarming discoveries. The interior was a disaster zone with mess and unsanitary conditions everywhere. It appeared as if the residents had departed abruptly, only taking essential belongings and abandoning the rest. Dirty dishes were stacked high in the sink, old food and mold sat on the kitchen table, and garbage covered the corners of the floor. In stark contrast, investigators found multiple empty bottles of cleaning supplies scattered around, and there were also remnants on the floor and carpet indicating an attempt to scrub areas clean. A disturbing black statue of death, draped in a black cloak and grasping a scythe, occupied one of the upstairs rooms. While it could have been dismissed as an eccentric decoration, its presentation as a makeshift altar, complete with wax candles, dried flowers, and 2 metal bowls, suggested a more sinister purpose. The setup bore an uncanny resemblance to the Mexican cult of Santa Muerte, which reveres a female embodiment of death. The house exuded an atmosphere of foreboding, as if a traumatic event had occurred, prompting the occupants to hastily gather their belongings and flee in a state of panic. A more thorough investigation was conducted using specialized tools to detect blood traces. This revealed multiple wiped blood stains in one of the bedrooms, the bathroom, and the hallway. The bedroom with the most significant bloodstains belonged to Charles, suggesting a violent crime had occurred there. However, the identity of the victim remained unclear. Despite attempts to clean the area, the blood had penetrated the carpet, seeped under the baseboards, and stained the wallpaper and furniture. To confirm the source of the blood, experts compared the samples with Morella's DNA. The results eliminated any remaining doubts, confirming that the blood belonged to Morella. The police had to seal the house as a crime scene, but their next challenge was to track down the main suspect, potential accomplices, and witnesses. However, this proved to be a difficult task as Charles had already fled the scene, and the owner had quickly put the house up for sale even before the police arrived. To gather more information, the police decided to investigate the people who had recently lived in the house. According to the neighbors, who described a complicated love triangle, 3 individuals had lived in the house: 57-year-old Lisa Dyke, 48-year-old Nina Morano, and 31-year-old Charles Beltran. However, the nature of their relationships and the reason for their sudden disappearance remained unclear. To move forward with the investigation, the police needed to look into each person's background and find them as soon as possible for questioning. The owner of the house, who was the only one reachable by phone, was a well-known lawyer with a commanding and ambitious personality. She had been married 3 times and had inherited a substantial amount of money after becoming a widow several years ago. Given her financial situation, it was unclear why she had rented a room to Charles, as she was not known for her charitable nature, suggesting that she may have had an ulterior motive. Charles Beltran, also known as Chuck, had big dreams of becoming a successful rapper. However, his lack of funds and connections, combined with a troubled past, made it difficult for him to get started. That was until he met Dyke, who offered him a helping hand. She took him in, setting up a small recording studio in her home, and even funded the production of several music videos to help launch his career. Dyke also provided Chuck with a car, paid for his social expenses, and bought him stylish clothing. Despite her significant financial investment in Chuck, Dyke maintained that their relationship was purely professional, insisting that she saw great potential in the young rapper and was simply investing in his future. The situation with Nina Morano was particularly interesting. She had been in a long-term relationship with Lisa, and after Lisa's husband passed away, they women no longer hid their romance. In fact, they had gotten married just a few months prior. Nina moved in with Lisa, who was already living with a young musician named Charles. Although Lisa denied it, a close friend claimed that she had a romantic relationship with Charles, and Lisa had even confided in her friend about how great he was as a lover. It seemed that Lisa was deeply in love with Charles, as evidenced by her efforts to look younger, including losing 55 pounds, changing her image, wearing bright makeup, and getting tattoos. Lisa had also made some significant changes to her life, including evicting her adult children from the home, citing that they were interfering with her personal life. Charles, on the other hand, had a clear interest in staying with Lisa, who was wealthy and could help him financially and advance his music career. However, as a physically attractive man, Charles often engaged in casual flings with young women, which made Lisa extremely jealous. But what was Nina Morano's role in all of this, and specifically, what did she have to do with Morella's disappearance? According to a close friend, Lisa's spouse, Na, was also involved in the unusual love triangle with Lisa and he. Na was a successful lawyer and a wealthy woman. The three of them lived a life of luxury together. After they got married, both women took his last name, Beltran, and the three of them lived together in the house. But what happened to the people who lived in the house where Morella's blood was discovered? After Morella disappeared, no one was seen at home again. Lisa was contacted once and answered a few questions, claiming she was in another state, but her phone was unreachable after that. There was no information about Na's whereabouts or the main suspect, Charles. On the night of October 5th, investigators monitored the mobile phone signals of the three residents and the missing person, Maricela, and found that all four signals were coming from within the house. By early morning, the signals had moved to a remote wooded area in suburban Dallas. Shortly after, the signals vanished. A few days later, Lisa briefly responded to messages on her secondary work phone, but it soon became unreachable as well. Using geolocation data from the mobile devices, authorities reconstructed the group's route that night, identifying the stops they made along the way. This information led them to suspect that the missing student's body might have been disposed of in this area. Although this narrowed down the search radius, the area was vast and challenging to navigate, hindering the progress of the investigation. The search for the missing Seattle student was suspended near the new year, as no body or clues were found. However, in March 2021, a local hunter discovered a human skull in the woods that appeared to be relatively recent. The hunter immediately reported the find to the police, who then sent the remains to a forensic laboratory for examination. Dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to the missing student, who had been gone for nearly 6 months. Although the body was badly decomposed and damaged by wild animals, making it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, forensic analysis revealed characteristic marks on the bones that suggested knife wounds. However, it was unclear whether these wounds were fatal. After the authorities found the body in the forest, they quickly identified the first suspects and tracked down Lisa, who had moved to Florida with her partner, Na. They had rented a house in Miami near the ocean. However, when the police arrived, only Na was apprehended, while Lisa went into hiding after learning about the situation. Charles, another suspect, was nowhere to be found, although he occasionally contacted his former girlfriends through messaging apps. In one of his last messages, Charles warned his acquaintances that the police were closing in and that they should be extremely careful. Meanwhile, Na, who was now in custody, denied any involvement in Marcela's disappearance, claiming she knew nothing about what had happened to her. Lisa, on the other hand, used her connections to try to hire a good lawyer for Na. While in Florida, Na attempted to sell her house in South Carolina as quickly as possible, likely to raise funds for their continued hiding or to flee the country. Authorities eventually tracked down Lisa and arrested her, and both women were taken back to Dallas. During initial questioning, neither woman provided any information, and their bail was set at $500,000 each. They were able to post bail and were released to house arrest, but were required to wear tracking devices that allowed authorities to monitor their movements. In August of the same year, Charles made a daring escape attempt, but police were hot on his trail and tracked him down to Utah, where he was hiding at the home of a former girlfriend. She, who had a 5-year-old son with Charles, was overjoyed to see him and didn't ask questions about his sudden return. When Charles was arrested, he initially refused to cooperate with the police or answer their questions. He was counting on his wealthy lover to use her influence and wealth to hire a top-notch lawyer to get him out of trouble. However, things took a dramatic turn on Christmas Eve in 2021. Lisa and Nina, who had been released on bail, suddenly went dark when their tracking bracelet stopped working due to the holiday chaos and high activity. The police didn't send a team to the suspect's location until the next day, but by then, they had already vanished. It was later discovered that the suspects had been carefully planning their escape for months. As a result, By the time the police pursued them, they had already crossed the border into Mexico undetected. From Mexico, they traveled to South Korea by air, and their trail eventually went cold in Cambodia. The FBI teamed up with the Cambodian police and immigration authorities to locate the suspects on the run. The women first raised suspicions after making a large cash withdrawal from an ATM, prompting authorities to monitor their movements. They tried to pay for everything in cash to stay under the radar, but security footage helped reveal their whereabouts. An ATM camera identified the fugitives, and another camera caught the license plate of the vehicle they arrived in. The vehicle's owner cooperated with police and took them to the residence where the foreign women were living extravagantly. They were recaptured in February 2022 and sent back to the United States, where they were taken into custody without the possibility of bail, ensuring they went directly to jail to face the law. Charles realized that his lover was only looking out for herself and had no intention of helping him avoid prison. This led him to decide to cooperate with the investigation and share information. His detailed account of the events that took place that night shocked many. Belen admitted to being in a romantic relationship with Lisa, the homeowner, and her spouse, Na, but claimed it was motivated by financial gain and a desire to further his music career. He did not have genuine feelings for these women and instead often pursued younger, attractive women, openly engaging in numerous affairs. On October 5, 2020, Chuck met Maricela, a young student, at a nightclub. They spent the evening drinking and dancing together, and he eventually invited her back to his place. Maricela agreed, and when they arrived, Chuck's roommates, Na and Lisa, were already asleep. Chuck and Maricela went to his room, where they engaged in intimate activities and fell asleep. Later that night, Lisa woke up and entered Chuck's room, where she saw Maricela sleeping next to him. This triggered a jealous outburst, and Lisa went to the kitchen to grab a large knife. She then returned to Chuck's room and attacked Maricela, repeatedly striking her with the knife. Charles reported that he was woken up by a noise and was initially disoriented due to intoxication. When he turned on the light, he was met with a disturbing scene. Morella's body had fallen to the floor beside the bed, where she had lost a significant amount of blood. Na entered the room, and both Charles and Na stood there for a few minutes, failing to provide any assistance to the victim. Once Charles regained his composure, he realized that he might be blamed for the crime due to his prior record, and that his influential acquaintances might avoid punishment. He claimed that this is why he agreed to help dispose of the body and conceal the crime. Charles stayed with friends for several days and, upon returning to collect his belongings, noticed that the blood stains on the floor and carpet had almost completely disappeared. Lisa informed him that she and Na had taken care of everything and destroyed the evidence of the crime. The three individuals involved decided it was best to leave town for a while and observe from a distance what would happen next. Lisa Dyke-Bell's defense team argued that she had no motive to harm she. According to her lawyer, Lisa's relationship with Chuck was purely professional, and she saw his music career as a valuable investment. She claimed that his personal relationships and interactions with others did not concern her. A key point made by her defense was that Lisa had recently gotten married to Moran and was happy in her relationship. However, it was unclear why she and her wife had decided to take the surname of their young lodger, Charles, after their wedding, despite claiming he was insignificant to them. During the trial, Lisa portrayed Charles as hot-tempered and cruel, especially when intoxicated, and stated that she feared him. Lisa's account of the events that night claims that Chuck brought a new woman home from the club, but their encounter turned violent when an argument broke out. Chuck allegedly grabbed a knife in a fit of rage. Lisa and Nina intervened, trying to separate they, but it was too late. Maricela was already dead. Chuck then coerced Lisa and Nina into helping him dispose of the body and clean up the crime scene, threatening to harm them if they didn't comply. However, a witness who testified in court, a friend of Lisa's, painted a different picture. According to the friend, Lisa was intensely fixated on Chuck and had often expressed a desire to get rid of any woman who got close to him. The friend suggested that Lisa's emotions got the better of her that night. The friend also mentioned a peculiar detail, a statue of Santa Muerte in Lisa's home, which was part of an improvised altar. Lisa had jokingly told her friend that she was into black magic and knew how to cast a spell to make a man loyal only to her. The ritual apparently did not work as planned, and she turned to using a knife instead. A real estate agent who was approached by the women shortly after the incident testified that they were desperate to sell several properties they owned as quickly as possible. They also wanted to put their home in Dallas up for sale, but were unable to do so while the investigation was ongoing because the house was a crime scene. The situation took a turn for the worse when the remains of she were found. At this point, Lisa and Nina were willing to sell the property at a significantly reduced price, just to get the money quickly. During the trial, the court considered Charles's full confession and his cooperation with the investigation. However, things took a turn for the worse for the fugitives after they attempted to flee to another continent. In March 2023, Lisa Dyke Beltran was convicted of a heinous crime against 23-year-old Maricela, as well as tampering with evidence and attempting to escape. She received a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Charles Beltran and Nina Morin, on the other hand, pleaded guilty and cooperated with the investigation. They were found guilty of concealing evidence. Nina received a 7-year prison sentence, but may be eligible for release in 3 years if she exhibits good behavior. Charles, who had prior convictions, was sentenced to 12 years in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 8 years.